Hello, good morning everyone. Delighted to be here. I thought by way of beginning, I'd just tell you a little bit about the Stanford Centre on Longevity, which you may not all be familiar with. The centre was set up about 10 years ago by two professors, Laura Carstensen, Professor of Psychology, and Tom Randell, Professor of Neurology, an expert in regenerative medicine. And the centre is essentially it's a research centre. And we focus on three different areas, what we call the mind division, which is all around engagement and staying mentally sharp, the mobility division, which is around physical activity, and then the third division is around financial security. And so just to give you a sort of flavour of the sort of things that we do in those areas, in the mind division it's very much focusing on, as I said, engagement, so looking at patterns of volunteerism and how that can also support longer life. Because as we know from the research, 7 extra years of life are often predicated by being able to be involved in social activities. Obviously, that also supports perception and cognitive health too. In relation to mobility, we're doing work around sedentary behaviour, ageing in place, and the impact of that for the general population. And then on financial security, some very interesting work obviously around financial capability, fraud, a recent report on fraud, and also information access, particularly in the US in terms of the impact of fake news and the impact for older population in terms of accessing accurate information. But in addition to the research work that the centre does, we're also doing classes, so undergraduate classes in relation to longevity, and a new class is just about to start in relation to the business of longevity, working with the Stanford Graduate School of Business. And then the final thing to mention, particularly for the academic professors in the room, we run an intergenerational sort of design challenge for students from around the world. The topic this year is reducing the inequity gap and designing for affordability. And this is an international competition for students from around the world. Last year the topic was around intergenerational activities and to designing for ways to bring the generations together. So it's open until early December if you have students who would be interested into applying for that. So let me tell you a little bit about what we're calling the New Map of Life project. I thought I'd touch on 3 things today. The New Map of Life, a little bit about the US's Academy of Medicine, the Healthy Longevity Grand Challenge, which Kenji in fact just spoke about, and then how we're taking the New Map of Life from the US perspective onto the global agenda. And we've heard a lot of common themes, I think, coming out today, which you'll now see sort of illustrated by some of the work that we're doing at Stanford. But I think in terms of a general observation, we certainly don't see long lives as a problem. The problem is the fact that we're now living lives which are being based on cultural norms, institutions, policies that were based on lives of half as long. And so that really sort of the underlying thinking in some of the ways we've been bringing together the New Map of Life initiative. So what is the New Map of Life all about? Well, essentially it's a 5-year initiative around a redesign. We're looking at ways we can redesign the norms and supports for longer life, for the century-long life. I mean, where would you put your extra 30 years? The extra 30 years of life expectancy that we've been given. You probably wouldn't tack it on at the end of life, but what we're finding is that old age is getting longer. And certainly at the Centre on Longevity, we are a centre not focusing on older life, but on the whole of life. I mean, Eric made this point right at the beginning. Longevity needs to focus on the whole of lifespan, and that's what this project is all about. So ways in which we can be mentally sharp, physically fit, financially secure throughout the century-long life, but also with a sense of belonging, purpose and worth, which I think goes to some of the more social aspects that have been commented on this morning already. I mean, if you're looking at how people answer that question of where we would put those extra 30 years, a lot of people now obviously will answer, well, how am I going to afford it? How am I going to pay for it? Am I going to get dementia? And so we have to be able to change that. And the existing norms obviously clearly don't exist. The linear approach of education, work, retirement is just a too rigid structure. So it's ways we can develop more flexible, fluid approach to these multi-stage lives that we're all now living. And the research that we're starting is doing just that. It's looking at new models, new policies, new interventions that can be looked at in an interdisciplinary way. I mean, the centre has probably a remit of over 150 different professors who work with the centre at Stanford. So it's a very interdisciplinary organisation, drawing on the different departments and teams and centres at Stanford. This is obviously a very busy slide, but so what did we do when we started the new program? We started this exercise last year, and what we did is we called together a 2-day meeting of interdisciplinary experts from different fields. So we had architects, we had educators, we had students, we had the millennial voice, we had the older voice, we had health professionals, finance professionals, philanthropists, health professionals, as I mentioned. So we brought together this eclectic mix of people, particularly also from the environment. The environment has been mentioned today, packed by Stephen. Different voices from different perspectives of society in terms of how we need to collectively, and again collaboration has been a big theme today, how we collectively need to work together to address this issue. So education and lifelong learning. But what we looked at here, and this is a sort of a picture, it was actually in a wall-sized chart. So actually this is a massive chart. We worked basically to present an as-is position in terms of the US data at the moment. So along a lifespan along the bottom, and then worked with a visual graphic artist who actually recorded our conversations in real time. Because some of these conversations are often quite difficult to write in a narrative way, but actually recording it in a visual way is something that we found was very useful. And in fact, maybe it's sort of another version of Kenji's moonshot diagram, but done in a visual way. And so the result of that 2-day meeting was lots of ideas as we basically set the challenge of how do you envision a century-long life which meets some of those criteria that we were talking about. And so after the 2 days, we've now sort of distilled all that into 3 component parts. So we have set up a research fellows program, which I'll tell you a bit more about, a communications campaign, particularly drawing on the points we've made about changing the narrative, working with media, working with advertisers. You probably saw the AARP and Getty Disrupt Aging set of images that came out recently. Using the energy of different organisations who are approaching this topic from different perspectives. And then the global agenda, which I'll mention shortly. In terms of the research fellows, what we have set up is a group of 8 postdoctoral fellows. The meeting last year really acted as a catalyst for us to go out and raise some funding, but both from business, from foundations, from individuals who were interested in supporting our work on the New Map of Life project. And as you can see, we've got a range of different specialisms. We've got the healthcare and technology, intergenerational, education, the mobility, the fitness and lifestyle. Early childhood is a really important one. When we had the discussion last year, the voice of the paediatricians, the voice of the child, the concern that the amount of funding and money being generated to the older population is really putting child health at jeopardy. And as we know, those early determinants of health are so important for later life. And so very important, we're very delighted to be able to have Jonas Miller working with us in relation to the childhood influences, work and obviously financial security. So you can see there is and in fact there's another one which isn't on the screen already, which is the environment, which we've just appointed to. So someone who's going to test different hypotheses around, for example, looking at energy usage and being able to look at the quality of life as a result of those sort of things. So really quite detailed analysis being done by these different fellows. So what they will do over a 2-year period is essentially do a really deep dive into these different domains. They'll, as I say, over the 2-year period, they'll be producing a number of reports, but they're also working through the umbrella of the Centre on Longevity in an interdisciplinary way. And we think this is probably one of the first organisations and centres to be able to do this. So people being housed in their sort of technical home, as it were, with a business advisor, but also an academic advisor from that discipline. But then hosted by the Centre on Longevity. And they'll be meeting every week through a series of seminars which are open to the rest of the university, so being very open and collaborative in terms of how the research is unfolding. So, for example, the seminars, again, will touch on a number of these sort of overarching themes, such as inequality and the disparity that we're seeing in terms of the wealth and health disparity that results from that, social influences, very interesting piece of research on the, sort of the molecular pathways by which social environments influence gene expression, for example. So using the wider research that's available at Stanford and bringing that through the lens of the new map of life. So a really exciting opportunity. This just kicked off a couple of weeks ago with the launch of the programme. So you're just hearing it really for the first time. So I think that probably is enough to give you a sense of what we're doing at Stanford through this new map of life initiative. We're now taking it to the global stage. With the Longevity Forum and Professor Andrew Scott from the London Business School, and as you probably know, wrote that great text, The 100-Year Life with Linda Grattan. We did a joint proposal to the Rockefeller Foundation to be able to hold a global meeting on this topic, so taking some of those topics that I've just described from a US perspective for the Stanford one onto a global stage. And just at the end of September, we were able to hold that meeting. Now, for those of you who are coming to the Longevity Forum meeting on Thursday, Andrew's going to talk a lot more about the results of that conversation, which was an international meeting. We had about 13 countries represented from across the world, from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, South America. And again, a completely interdisciplinary group, from environmentalists to educators to health professionals. What I actually felt was missing probably is more the humanity. Where is the voice of the musicians? Where's the voice of the artists, the writers, the poets? We need more, I think, more voices at the table in terms of having this conversation, and that was recognised in terms of some of the follow-on work that we're going to be doing. But the purpose of that meeting at the Bellagio Centre in Italy was very much around defining what this global agenda looks like, and really some common themes coming through from the conversations we've had today, particularly at the government level and how we can make recommendations in terms of what the government should be doing. I noticed on Dimitri on your charts there was sort of quite an open area in relation to Africa, for example, and we've already talked about the impact for lower and middle income countries. This is where I think the focus needs to also come, and identifying a number of principles against which these decisions can be made. So I think you'll probably see we're all going in a sort of common direction here, and that's a wonderful picture of us all at the Bellagio. Just very quickly, you talked about master plans for ageing. California have now got a blueprint, a master plan for ageing, and I think it's another route forward, given that we're talking about governance and policy at this meeting. And then briefly on the US National Academy of Medicine, as you know, they have launched the Global Grand Challenges, really as a way to, I think, bring together the ideas as a hub and as a catalyst for change, focusing on sort of the social, the mental and the physical aspects. And they've got this roadmap for 3 different areas around social behaviour, environmental, healthcare systems, public health and science and technology. And as I'm sure you know, there's a competition which is being hosted in the UK through the UK Research and Innovation Organisation, really to spearhead the collaboration initiative from this work. So very pleased to be able to share this with you. Please let me know if you have any questions in relation to the Stanford work. I'd be happy to share that and introduce you to relevant people as you'd like. So thank you.
Thank you.